Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Change the Air interview. My name is Kendra Seymour, and today I'm joined by Jamie Way. He's a parent of a child who was unknowingly being affected by mold and water damage, and now he's using his story to raise awareness. Welcome, Jamie. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Kendra, appreciate the time.
So, Jamie reached out to Change the Air Foundation a few months ago because he wanted to share the story about what happened to his daughter. When she was 4 years old, she started to lose her hair. By the time she was 5, she lost every hair on her head, face, and body. And today he's here to talk about how his little girl's condition ended up saving not only their home, but everyone in it. Now, his full story will be featured in an article that he wrote, and we'll share that on the Change the Air Foundation website. But he's kindly agreed to speak with us today. So I just want to say thank you again, Jamie, for sharing your story, for shining your light on a topic that is downplayed and misunderstood, because it can truly be devastating financially, physically, and emotionally. And I know there'll be someone out there listening today who, because of this interview, is going to start asking the critical questions about that connection between their health and their home. And that's what we're all about at Change the Air Foundation. So let's start at the beginning, Jamie. Things kind of first changed for your family. You were out of town when you received a phone call from your wife. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a random story, but I was a few hours away at a friend's wedding, and we are on our way back. It's about a 5-hour drive from where we were, and my wife was home with my daughter at that time, and she gave me a call, just saying, first thing she said was, "I don't want you to panic. Everything is fine." But our daughter had some hair on the pillow. I was like, okay. And she's like, I'm going to send you a picture, but don't worry, everything is fine. And she kept saying everything is fine because I could tell just the tone that she was telling me that my daughter was probably sitting right next to her. And I got the picture, and I couldn't even really tell what I was looking at. I kind of responded right away, like, what is this? And what it was is it was the back of my daughter's head, and everything was gone. Basically, from the base of her head down to her neck was completely bald, and there was just a few stringy hairs. And I was with her the day before and didn't see any issues. We didn't notice anything. It wasn't like this was like uh, a reoccurring issue or she had thinning hair. None of that. It just was
Gradual and
overnight,
sudden.
super gradual. Um, and I didn't really understand what I was looking at all, but the 5-hour drive was incredibly long because I'm sitting there just worrying, trying to be like, okay, maybe it's all the thoughts. Is she allergic to this? Is it the pillow? Maybe she pulled it. Maybe are we using detergent? Like any thought you could think of flew through my head. And by the time we got home and I got dropped off with my friend, um, my daughter came up, gave me a big hug, and she said, "Mom says it's fine." I said, "Okay." And you could tell that she was just flushed. I could see, she's a 4-year-old daughter. I mean, 4-year-old kid at this point. She doesn't really have to worry about a lot of things. She's not a very stressful kid. She's very outgoing. But I could just see there was like anxiety in her a little bit. And um it was it's a hard moment to explain because I was sitting there talking to my wife, and my wife she's a teacher, she's using a very calm tones and just saying how, oh, sometimes this happens if we're allergic to certain things, we'll discuss everything. And in between the sentences, I remember this vividly, like the looks that my wife and I were giving each other were just like panic. um by the time I got home, my mother-in-law, my wife's mom, is a nurse. And they hatched the plan essentially, like, okay, you're gonna talk to our pediatrician, who is gonna contact you with a dermatologist. So by the time I got home, there was already the next week or so was laid out in front of me of what we're gonna do, which was great because I was clueless. I had no idea what was happening. And it's just kind of I I feel like there's that moment that's cemented in my brain, and then the rest of it is just the craziest blur.
Yeah.
But we went through the process, we're like, okay, what do we do? Um, and we set up a meeting with the pediatrician, and she was great, but it was just kind of like, I think we may have gone in there trying to find answers, but skeptical if we would, because it just was so sudden. And we were just trying to make sure that there wasn't like some strange health scare that's happening inside of our body. So we started going through all the lists of the things that it could be. And it almost just felt like we were pulling straws for ideas. Like it could be this, it could be that. And the pediatrician was just like, just go through your family history, see if there's any kind of like any clues, and then we'll book a time to go talk to a dermatologist. Um, and it just was, this is that period. I try to revisit that a little bit, and I did in the article, just trying to get into that headspace again was just so confusing. Um, and I was desperately looking for answers, and no one could give me anything that I wanted to hear, or a easy explanation, or I'm looking for, oh, it must be the pillowcase. She's allergic
Mhm.
to it. Did we get a new, is it, what did we buy from Target? Is she wearing clothes that she shouldn't wear? Is it
Right.
like, we were vegetarians at that time. So it's like, are we not getting enough iron? Like all the basic stuff is flooding my brain. Um, and it was scary, to be honest with you. And even going into the dermatologist appointment after that, when we met the dermatologist within a few weeks of that initial sign of alopecia, um, the dermatologist gave us a warning that it could be alopecia. And at that time, I had no idea what that word was. I've never heard of it in my life. Um, and she was describing to us alopecia is um, basically an autoimmune uh, disease of some sort where the body is kind of rejecting your hair. Um, there's no cure for this, but this is something that happens to people sometimes. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's large, sometimes it goes away. Basically, everything we were told was how random it is. And we should go home and figure out if there's any like tells in our family of alopecia, which there weren't. Um, and she gave us a clue or she gave us hope that it could be something else. Maybe there's it could just be like a reaction to her pillow. It could be something, but let's just monitor it and see what we can do.
So let
um
me ask you. So this weeks have gone by. I know it can take a while to get into specialists. Like at home, are you guys like tossing her pillows, switching detergents? Is she losing more hair?
at home we are doing all the things. All the pillows are out. We're changing the sheets. We're trying to, I'm researching vitamins for, or like chewable vitamins for iron, anything like that. Between the first scheduled appointment of the dermatologist to the second one, it was about a 3 week period, and she just was losing more and more hair every day. It went from just the back to the sides getting really thin, to the top up here getting thin at the top, and it was amazing how fast it progressed. And it just seemed like by the time we had the second our second meeting with dermatologists, we knew that it had to have been alopecia. It's almost like we were hoping for it, because it's like, if it's not alopecia, what is happening on the inside? Like, um, so she confirmed that it was on our second visit. And again, at this point, my daughter had a bald spot on the top, and very thin hair on the sides. And my uh, my in-laws were actually in town at that time, and I remember coming home and they were waiting for us to get back from the dermatology visit, and just all of us just, you know, and it was one of those moments where it just felt so uncurable. It just felt like so hopeless and so random that there's nothing we could do. They're basically, our dermatologist was great. She was very, she gave us a plan of being like, okay, this is alopecia. And I'm going to order you some squaric acid to start to use for her. We're gonna look at her blood levels to make sure her iron is good and see if there's any lead exposure, anything like that. We're gonna start these tests, but we wanted to let you know that this is alopecia, and we'll start our plan, but just start to accept that this is what it is. And it just at that moment I was like, oh my god, there's what can you um for someone to say that there's no cure and is random, it just was it was heartbreaking for sure.
Did you feel in your gut that maybe there at this point was another answer, or were you just trying to come to terms with the diagnosis and what the doctor had said?
Yes to all things. It definitely like immediate anxiety through the roof. Looking at it like it can't just be, this can't be a forever thing. Like this can't be it. And then I look at her hair progressing and just falling out of her head every day, more and more every day, that it was this level of, okay, I have to accept, but then I refuse to accept. And that was my battle for years. I mean, even to today, and sharing the story, there is elements of like you just feel unsure sometimes, and I learned how to kind of power through that. But it was definitely like I got to do something, but then they're telling me there's nothing I could really do. So
What did
um,
treatment look like for her? Because I know she's one amazing, resilient,
she,
optimistic little girl. So tell us about the recommended treatment at this point.
yeah, so essentially the way alopecia was described to us, being that it was an autoimmune issue, her system was attacking her hair like it was almost allergic to it. It was being, for some reason, her body felt that it had to get the hair out of her body. And um, it also, the main idea of their main initial treatment was, let's give her body something better to fight. And instead of it attacking the hair, why don't we give her skin something to actually combat and a real issue to deal with? So they gave us squaric acid, and squaric acid is essentially, it's a lighter acid. It's not like it's going to burn a hole in clothes or anything like that, but it does, for sensitive skin, causes an extreme reaction. And we started the first night with squaric acid, and they gave us warnings like, please do not apply this on her head with bare hands because you'll burn your hands. Um, Please make sure she wears like some sort of swimmy cap because you'll stain your pillowcases. And just like the description of the preparation for her, I was like, what are we putting on her head? But we were so scared. They were like, we'll do anything we can. Like, whatever you tell us to do, like, let's just do it. So
On a
we started
4-year-old, just, like,
on a 4-year-old's head. Mm-hmm. And we put squaric acid on the initial place at the base of her head. And her scalp immediately responded, and it started getting blisteringly red. Her lymph nodes started swelling. Every place that we put the squaric acid, it had this huge reaction of just bright red and kind of cracking. And she said it didn't hurt, but it just was hot and uncomfortable. But we did it every single night. And that was the plan. It was like, okay, this is where it's a good thing to have a big reaction, is what we were told. The more that her body reacts, the more chance we can divert this inflammation to something that is something real that's happening on her body. And for about a year and a half, we did that every single day. And I thought at the time, every place that we put it, I would see more hair almost crumble off of every place we put it on her scalp. The doctors were saying that's not the case. It's impossible. That's just alopecia going through its process. Just keep putting on the squaric acid. And every night we would put on a little swimmy cap, and we tried to make it fun, like, because she's a kid. So we try to make it like joyful wherever we could. So we had like a whole array of different swimmy cap colors, and she could pick it out. Um, and she was so sweet about it. And then every morning, I would hop in the shower with her and rinse off the squaric acid. And then at this point, we're using ditho cream, which is almost like a soother. And it was just every morning, it just in the shower, it just clumps, more and more clumps. And it got to the point that her eyelashes and eyebrows were starting to disappear. Not that kids at this age are particularly hairy legs, but they're all the little spuds of hairs are all on their legs and arms, completely gone. And it got to the point that we were getting really frustrated that this was kind of our only choice. One of the additions was adding Allegra, because they're saying that some sort of antihistamine would help, which is kind of interesting because the more I learned about it, histamines are a problem, and understanding that. So I feel like there was an understanding enough that they had a clue of histamine, but then Allegra is like giving a kid Allegra every day from today until forever, like with no plan of stopping, was for me probably the last straw, because her hair kept falling out. We're giving Allegra daily, and I'll show you pictures and I'll share some pictures, but it got to the point that her hair was so stringy. The only thing we were left with just these little strings, and it just was completely bald. And I remember the day that I was like, Aria, this is the day that I am going to shave your head, because it's just getting in your way. It's harder to shampoo it out in the morning. It's just time. And she's like, okay. And I'm sitting there shaving her head, just like trying to hold it together. Even thinking about it now, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I'm sure you had to project a calm and everything's okay. And inside, I imagine it for you and your wife, that was a very different feeling from what you were projecting outwardly.
Yes, and that was the hard. I think that was probably the hardest thing. Not to, harder for her, but it was harder for her because she had to go through it. But it was us trying to make sure that she was happy, and just this happens to kids sometimes. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay. It's totally fine. It'll come and go. And then just worrying about it every day, like every playing with her all day long, and then at night just being like, turning into a nail biter and trying to figure it out. It Anyone who's gone through this will know dermatologists are great, amazing, brilliant people, but very hard to book. So there'll be months to go by without any updates. And every day to us was crucial because it just was more stuff. And it really changed from how do we treat this? How do we treat this to how do we just accept this? And how do we train her to accept this? And how do we teach her how to live with this every day? And how do we become okay with her having this every day? I mean, she's a beautiful little kid, and nothing else seemed wrong with her. She was great. But it's my daughter at this point was completely bald. We shaved her head and there was a couple patches left, but we kept doing our squaric acid and basically did that treatment until there was nothing left. Not an eyelash, not an eyebrow, not a toe hair, nothing on her body was left. And I think my wife had a better outlook on it. I was happy for her. I was a happy dad. I'm playing with her, but I just was like, oh, like I could not sleep. You know, it's my daughter with no hair. And she's at this point, she's 5 or 5.5. And we're teaching, you know, she's in preschool, and we're teaching other parents how to ask questions or how to approach it if it ever gets brought up. We're teaching them how to tell their kids about it, and how we're just saying that she's allergic to her hair right now, because honestly that's the only information we had. It was just so unknown and random. um and we did all the blood tests in the world, everything came back fine. um so there's just no clues. And I just started getting really fidgety and just started going like, I can't sleep. um there's got to be another way, there's got to be something I'm missing. So I'm just googling things that I don't know what to Google. I don't know the right keywords. I know nothing about indoor air quality, nothing, none of that registered. And I just started getting antsy, and I said, I have to go and have a meeting with the dermatologist, and this is probably going to be our last meeting because I don't see the point. And um, I went in there basically trying to say, this is our last day of squaric acid. I'm done. We've done it for so long. I still have a bottle of it. But we did it for so long. I was like, this can't be it. And at this time, our dermatologist, I think we actually switched. We didn't switch. One of them retired and another one took over. And she had our new dermatologist had had a baby. And I was like, if this was your child, what would you do? Like, what would you do? Like, I'm desperate. Like, what do you like? How can we just keep going down the same road? And, you know, she was very patient with me, and she was talking about different studies that are coming out and immune suppressants. There's these things called JAK inhibitors, which basically like squishes down your immune system. So it makes it less efficient. But it's scary because if you get sick, you don't have an immune system. So you're like, oh my God. And she's talking about different wigs and different things and how to approach it. And uh, she was very respectful, but that was just all I needed to hear. When she just was like, here's an amazing wig specialist that's really close to you guys. Let's just stay with the squaric acid. It's okay. There's more studies coming out. And I was just like, I can't do it. And we left that meeting being like, I called my wife, like, it's all, we're doing something else. I don't know what we're going to do, but I feel like very on our own. I feel very alone, but we're going to figure something else out. Either we just stop all treatments and then look at it again in a couple of years, or we just something. And I left that office just, I'm an emotional guy, but I was just sitting there just like, you know, like, oh, walking down the hallway, and there's Arya skipping down the hallway. And I was like, do you want to go to a toy store? You did great in the office. You did great in the doctor's office. She's like, yeah. And we skipped all the way down to the toy store, her just like swinging my hand, almost like she knew that I was uh, having a hard time. So she was trying to make me feel better. Um, and she brings up this day almost every other month. She's like, you remember that time? Because we went into a toy store. She got this like giant golden dragon stuffy. And I was like, oh, that is beautiful. Made me feel better for some reason. And as we're walking down the street, it just starts pouring rain. And I'm not prepared at all. And I'm sitting here with my daughter who has a little stuffy, and I'm just getting drenched. And it's like a very dramatic scene. Like it felt like it was like, okay, this is like, it felt like the low part in the story, the arc of the movie.
Yeah.
You know. And we waited for the bus because I didn't have my car that day, so we took the bus to the doctor's and back. And she was so excited to ride a bus, and she's drenched. And I'm sitting there like, okay, we have to do something. I'm not going to throw in the towel. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to throw in the towel. I'm just going to ask questions. because she's amazing and she's very patient. And why wouldn't I? Like, what? I can't. I'm accepting it. I'm saying I'm accepting that this could be forever, and she's amazing no matter what, and that's okay. It's okay if she doesn't have a piece of hair on her for the rest of her life. She's incredible, but I will be damned if I don't try something, if I don't try to find an answer. Um, and my wife was all about it too. She said, "Yeah, let's just see what we can figure out." And yeah, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but that's basically like that's the whole that was the breaking point that just made me go, there's got to be another way. Um, and I didn't know how to Google yet. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know anything about mycotoxins, anything. But we, just started asking questions and asked everybody questions. Before I was a little bit more, not, I guess more polite. I wouldn't be as bold, but this time I'm like, what would you do? Hey,
No
stranger.
stone unturned, right?
Yeah, just really like went to anyone I was comfortable with. I would talk to them about it. And my sister-in-law actually gave me a gem. She was like, I've been reading about um, this fecal transplant program where they give a belt, like they take feces of someone who has a very strong imbalanced stomach, and they give that to someone who has some sort of gut dysbiosis or imbalances to help cultivate better bacteria in their belly. And I heard that that's actually something that they're looking into for potentially alopecia. I was like, why would your belly have anything to do with your hair? Like, I don't know anything. So I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, you have given me a gem of Googling alopecia and fecal transplants. And then that's now my keywords, and I'm like, I'm starting to Google that and just look into it. And I wrote in the article too. It felt like another very dramatic moment of it was like Christmas Eve, and we're driving back from hanging out with the families, and the kids are asleep in the back seat of the car. And we're gonna get some Indian takeout, and I'm sitting there in the car waiting for the food to get ready, and it's just pouring rain again, very dramatic. And I'm Googling alopecia and fecal transplants, and I come across like an article of um, uh, this company called Alopecia Angel, actually, and they were talking about treating alopecia holistically and what does that look like, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm gonna email her or email the company, and Joanna wrote back immediately like, hey, I would love to talk, and I was like, okay, this is at least there's something here that I want to talk about, and there's someone who says they found another way holistically, and I'm so done with acid and Allegra and immune suppressant drugs and all these things. Another one of the options that they gave were steroid injections into the scalp. And I was like, oh, and my heart goes out to anyone who's doing that right now. I don't want to diminish any program that someone is on that has alopecia or the kid is. I understand. You do anything you can. Um, but there's just certain things we're like, oh my God, I can't do it. So I got on the call with her, and we just started talking about vitamins and diets and how that really helps with the gut. And she was saying, alopecia is a cause and a response from a leaky gut. I was like, what's a leaky gut? Like, you know, I'm a blank canvas. I have no idea. Um, and she went through the process of describing what that is. She basically held my hand through helping me understand what this is. Um, and we're still quasi-vegetarian, so I'm not trying to just start, feeding my daughter organ meats and all this stuff, even though that's very healthy. And we just weren't there. We weren't there yet. So we're trying to figure out what we can do for this now 6-year-old, I believe, 5.5. My little fuzzy on the years, but how do we get her to start eating these different foods when all she wants is pancakes, cupcakes,
Yeah.
and cheese.
She's a kid.
She's a kid. And we're trying to figure out this new way of treating her belly and just approaching everything with diet. And she hated it. She hated it. It made her feel very different. I think at that point, when we're like, okay, we can't really do wheat, so no cupcakes right now. And we're kind of skittish around pizza. And anytime she had like a friend party, like, we're like, don't eat that right now because we're trying to get you. And she hated it. This was the moment that I felt like she kind of held it on her shoulder, like brushed it off her shoulder pretty well up to this point. And then when it came down to the food, she was like, you're taking away my ice cream now?
Yeah.
That was a breaking point for us. So that was very tricky. But my wife was able to find some amazing recipes, and we were still able to fill her face with waffles. And she basically only ate gluten-free waffles for the first few months because we could still give her some sugar a little bit with it. But it was really hard. It was hard. That I think the diet part was actually, people don't talk about it as much, but that's like one of the, especially for kids.
It
That
was
was like,
AIP, right? I've been on that in various points in my life. It's very good for your gut
yeah,
and temporary, but it's very restrictive. It was hard as an adult. I can't imagine as a child.
yeah. And AIP is amazing because you can, you boil everything down to a very restrictive diet, like you said, and then you start to one by one figure out like what are you allergic to and what are you not. And maybe as a grown up, I could, try to figure that out. But with her, it just was like, we just were saying, okay, let's just restrict as much wheat as we can right now. And as much cheese as we can, but then let's figure out how to supplement. Um, and yeah, this is the time that she was starting to throw some little fits, and I understood, but we're like, okay, I have to teach you how to take vitamins. I'm going to try to get you back to your cupcakes and all your things. And I want you to be a happy little kid, but we have to figure this out together. And I told her anything that she's doing, I'm going to do it too. So I was like, no wheat, no, all these things. Probably just as hard for me. But one of the things was trying to teach her how to take vitamins. So she's such a little one that I was like, okay, she doesn't know how to take vitamins yet, so I'm teaching her how to do that through like little frozen blueberries, and we're practicing. And anytime that she does something and it works, like she was able to take a blueberry and swallow it, we would like celebrate it. It's such a big deal. Anytime that she loved a new AIP pancake or something like that, we're like, yeah, you do, yes, a new food, just trying to make it fun. It's like harping back to the colored swim caps. You try to be like, how do you make this livable, because it's such a cute little person.
Yeah. Lots of parents who've had children with complex illnesses or have tried some sort of diet and understand the difficulty like in doing that. It really is a laborious thing and an emotional thing, and it's 3 times a day plus 2 snacks at that age, that it's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
So when did you finally, so you're thinking gut health, but when did you make the leap to your home or mold? Like what started to like connect the dots there for you?
Yeah, I think it was just out of pure exhaustion of doing this diet and supplements for 6 months or so, and starting to see little dots and little sign of health or like regrowth, but it was very slow. And my mind just started waking me up again in the middle of the night, being like, that can't just be it. It can't just be that she is eating too much cheese for her to lose all of her hair. This can't be it. And I started looking into like environmental triggers, because I was still working with Alopecia Angel at the time. She's like, maybe just look around your house, see if there's, have you seen any leaks in your house? Do you have like, she started listing off all the things that could be happening in our house. I said, leaks. Okay. What does that have to do with it? And then I started Googling alopecia mold, which actually there was not a lot to find in looking in that, at least for my Googling skills at the time. I couldn't really find a connection between mold exposure and alopecia, but I could find mold exposure and autoimmune. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, let's start to dig into this. And I started looking into Neil Nathan a lot, and bought his book and listened to anything that he said, any of his podcasts, um, and just started inhaling that information as fast as I could, not knowing what to do with it. But I started going, okay, there's something here. And I said, I'll go test the mold. I'll go test my house for mold myself, and went to our local hardware store and like wiped a wall with their little kit that they for $12. And I was like, oh, it came back negative. Okay, no mold. And then I progressively would wake up again in the middle of the night saying that's not it. I think my brain just kept saying keep digging, and started looking up different inspections. And this is where I think a lot of our this is one of the reasons why I wanted to share our story, is because I inspected our house wrong so many times. I did it like, I think 3 different inspections. I would say 3.5 that were all incorrect.
Yeah.
They were doing it the wrong way, and I don't blame them, but I didn't know better. So I'm just looking for mold inspector with the best Yelp reviews,
Right.
because that's how we search for things. That's how you find a good restaurant. That's how you find a good mold inspector. So a guy came over, took an air test. He started sniffing around the house a lot, like he was doing like a nose test. I was like, and thinking back to it, I'm just cracking up. But at
Yeah.
that time, I was like, oh, okay, this guy's nose must be really sensitive
Yeah.
because he's
Right.
sniffing the whole house. Um, but he was doing air tests everywhere, and he found one spore of Stachybotrys in my daughter's room. And he was like, this is only one spore, but that's usually a red flag. You should have something coming. Like, I'm going to recommend you to a remediation company. It's like, what is remediation? I had no, like, literally just falling forward
Yeah.
and just figuring it out in the most clumsy way possible. Which is another reason why I wanted to share this, because I am no guru. I've basically been like tripping over my feet this entire time. But it was pretty amazing, because they're like, okay, this one spore Stachybotrys in her room, which now I know that if there's one, and I mean, Stachybotrys is heavy and sticky, and
Right.
there's if you caught one in an air sample, there's something happening. And he also noticed some visible mold downstairs, and we found that there was no drainage under our house. So the biggest clue was like, okay, there's for some reason a spore in her room, which is that way. And then we saw a drain issue, which is on the other side of the house down this way. And we got a remediation company to come in. We put a sub pump in front of the house. And we were like, okay, it's the basement. We fixed it. Like, we're done. And then one of the clues was during this time, my daughter's room was basically walled off with the plastic walls, and they had these giant air scrubbers, like a HEPA filters,
You'd be
industrial.
remediating her room at this point, right? A window?
Yeah, so this is even pre-window. So
Okay.
so this is just cleaning the air. And they were cleaning out her air for the first time, and she was staying in our room, and within the first couple days, there was this one little hair that just went bing and just popped up. I was like, whoa, because we've seen little buds before with the diet, but nothing that actually was that grew like that. I was like, that's really interesting. And the moment that they removed the plastic wall and the HEPA filters in there, and she moved back into her room, it was gone. And it took me a long time to try to figure out, how did she get a reading in her room, and the only mold that we noticed from our inspection was downstairs. So I said, we got to inspect again. and had another inspector come, and they were kind of poking around with moisture readers, which felt way more sophisticated, which is definitely good. But we weren't doing any kind of ERMI tests, any kind of dust tests. It was air tests and moisture readers. And again, didn't find anything. But I did know that we had a leaky roof. And I was like, we have to replace the roof. This has got to be it. So it must be coming from the roof. So we started working on the roof. We had a leaky sink. So I was like, okay, it's probably the roof in the sink. It's got to be the roof in the so we're fixing these things. And the whole time, nothing is sitting right. Like, how could it be? How is she the only one affected? And for the longest time, there's been an issue, or there's been like almost like a discoloration on the windowsill outside of her room, because our house kind of faces the bay, and it just looked weathered on the window outside of her room. And as the guys were fixing the sink, I asked one of the guys, "Is like, hey, do you mind just like sanding down her windowsill and we'll just repaint it?" He's like, "Sure, no problem." And he went to sand it. He was using his little paint chipper, and it just all the wood started ripping apart like pulled pork outside of her window. And I said, "Stop what you're doing." It was literally like falling apart in his hands. And I was like, "Stop, wait. This might be the clue." And he said, "Let me just go in and check on the inside of the windowsill in her room to see if there's an issue there." And he takes the putty knife and just goes like this, and it just like cuts into the wood like it's like a butter knife into butter. And part of me was very excited in a way that we found it, because I've been racking my brain for months and months and months. And then I got so scared, because it's like, that's the Stachybotrys. She's been sleeping in that room for years. She's basically facing that window. She's been breathing in these spores for years, every single night. And I called a remediation company immediately. They came out and started removing it, but they couldn't remove it right away because there was lead paint in there as well. And that I couldn't believe. So they had to get the abatement people to come in before they could remove the window. And that was the beginning of how everything changed. This is before we even started really working with a functional medicine doctor, or this is right around the time that I started looking into functional medicine, because I felt immediately overwhelmed. I was like, wait, there's mold, and I understand more from these books and mycotoxins, and I'm starting to get more savvy with it, and I don't know what to do. I don't want to give my kid binders. I don't want to do all these things. I need help. So we started looking up functional medicine. We're getting a remediation happening. And it was probably many months of her also taking these probiotics through the diet and through the supplements that we were doing. But the moment that we removed that window, there was this patch that just went boop in the back corner of her head. And we've seen like little hairs before, like I was saying, but this was like, it was a thick little patch. And we just like, I remember, because I took pictures every day about in the afternoon, just to like try to capture the light that would hit her head, just so I can see if there's any growth or any change. And to show her, I showed her the picture of this patch that was just glowing in the sun, and she just started like jumping and screaming. And then I showed my wife the little patch, and my wife just started bawling, and we like called everybody, called the family, like, there's the patch. And she was so excited. It was hilarious and beautiful at the same time. Just like, but we couldn't believe it. We're like, it can't be the window. Can it be the window? Like, we're still not accepting the science in a way. But sure enough, every week there would be like, the patch would grow a little bit. And then there would be like little supportive hairs that come underneath it to help those grow. And then all of a sudden, on the other side of the head, there was a patch. You're like, there's two patches. And we just started, like, every little patch was a celebration. And it was incredible. Like, to that feeling was amazing. And we didn't know how far it would go. Like, maybe just with some patches, maybe that was it. But I think once we started seeing eyelashes come back, that just was like, we're doing it. This is it. This is it. Um, and she always had very long, beautiful eyelashes, and they would come in at these little white clumps and then go and just start coming back. And she grew one eyebrow back, and the other one didn't come for like 6 months. But it was just like this process of watching this and just being amazed by this beautiful little girl and how strong her body is, just like resurging back, like coming back. Um, and her health was getting better in general. I could just see her energy was coming up and all these changes. I was like, could it really be tied to something physical like that? Like, that seems, it almost felt like we were onto something, but then that couldn't be it, and that was the hands down biggest breakthrough for us. Once we put back the window, and over time we just stayed on her supplements. We kind of kept her low on wheat, still, and it just every week there would be more, and it just started growing to the point that now she still has a couple thin spots, um, but it's we're at like 98% fully grown back. Her hair's long. Um, she she goes places without hats anymore, which was a big deal. The amount of hats that we have of all shapes, sizes, colors. Um, she started saying no hats on the weekends. Uh, to the point of that now she just doesn't wear hats to school at all. Um, you know, there were so many times. I think part of this process was the fear of the future, of what it could be for her when she's older. Um, because a 5-year-old without hair, initially kids are like, "You don't have any hair." She goes, "I know," and then they go run off and play. It was We're blessed to have this happen at this age in a way, but thinking of her later in life and having to go through that and all the extra pressures that came with that, was scary for us. And to think that we have found the trigger for her was just like this um, incredible feeling of just like it was like a victorious feeling, but then just like it was sad too, because she had to go through all these things, and then it was just this, all the emotions just packed into one into one feeling. So I definitely I skipped through a lot of that stuff and I rambled on for other parts of it, but that's what I try to do with the article. I really wanted to just kind of document it in a way. It was just kind of a brain dump, trying to figure out, like, wait, what happened again, and go through the order of it and understand what happened. But the main reason why I did it was for our own sanity. And then I started looking at it being like, this is something that we should probably share and tell people, because no one thinks about this. Like, when I was Googling mold and alopecia, maybe I wasn't doing it the proper way. But I couldn't find any information on this stuff.
You know what? This interview and your article, we're going to change that so that when people start Googling that your story pops up and gives them hope. I do want to say, it is clear how much you and your wife love your daughter. And I can empathize completely with the years of doing what the doctor says and trying to be there for your kid in a way that's supportive, and inside you're struggling and you're Googling at 3 a.m. I know we've talked about that before, or every free moment in between. And you were the one who connected those dots. And looking back, you kind of gave us some of your reflections. If someone's going through this now, what advice would you say to them? Even if it's not alopecia, if they're struggling with something unexplained in their health or their children's health, what would you tell them?
Keep digging. We approach things as a rule it out uh, type of mentality. Um, when the blood tests don't tell you anything, or you seem like you hit a wall, or you're kind of being taught that this is a forever just accept kind of scenario, keep digging. Look deep, like look further, pull from all medicines, pull from all sciences. Don't be idealistic. Don't sit there and say that this is Western medicine and this is functional medicine and I only go here or I only go here. Pull from everything. There's brilliant people on all sides. Use the information. Just start digging. Be a detective, because it's the moment that we decided that we're gonna like just start turning over all the stones. Sure, we made all the mistakes. We tested wrong. We looked the wrong places. But really, like, take the time. Take the time to look at the resources. Take the time to pull from the different sciences, and don't be scared to dig deeper into them. Don't write things off because of what you've heard from somebody. I think there's branding issues that are happening right now, where Western medicine is this and functional medicine and holistic medicine is it's not proven, or pseudoscience gets thrown around a lot. And I'm like, listen, you are worth the time you are worth it to understand all the different sciences. If there's something happening with you or your kid, it's worth the effort to understand what they're talking about. Even if someone says this is pseudoscience, don't listen to it. Explore what they're talking about. It's not pseudoscience. There's a lot that's happening in our houses, in the air that we breathe, in the places that we live, that affect us in so many ways. And I think deep down, the people who are going through this know that. They know that there's something there. They
Yeah.
know that it's not just a random occurrence.
Yeah. That is really wonderful advice. And something that I think, I know I resonate with personally. And I think too, you touch on something earlier, and for anyone listening, I made a lot of the same mistakes. I like learned things the hard way. That's why I co-founded Change the Area Foundation. That's why we've all come together, because we wanted to provide a place for resources. Now, not to segment off your story, if you're listening, if you go to our website, changetheairfoundation.org, we talk about what a good indoor environmental professional, it's IEP inspection, should look like. So you're not making some of these mistakes, because they cost you time and they cost you health. We talk about the testing options and the pros and cons. We have a whole new mini class series, and looking into if remediation is something that needs to happen, what that looks like. And we're going to be expanding, you touched on lead, to all those things, indoor air quality, because it matters. Now, you didn't touch on this, and I don't want to take too much more time, but you noticed a change in your health too, though, right?
I definitely have. So I made the initial agreement with my daughter that anything that she does, I do. So when we worked with the functional medicine doctor, I applied to be a patient myself. So she gave us both mycotoxin urine tests, lead heavy metal tests, stool tests for gut imbalances, and we even did like a food allergen test. And we also did methane tests. We basically did the rule it out. We said, you know what, we're gonna sit there, and it was expensive, to be honest with you, but it was the level that we're like, we're here now. Let's just figure it out, rule it out. And my levels came back just as high. My daughter's levels came back high in mycotoxins, came back high in lead, even though her blood test said there was no problems with lead. Her urine came back with high in lead because of the dust that was coming from the window, same window. and her
Yeah.
body was trying to detox it out, and it was trying to detox it through urine, and you could see it in the urine, but not in the blood. Mine was through the roof with mycotoxins, not in lead, but also in methane and gas. And hers was high in methane and gas because we had a small little gas leak in our house that we didn't even know.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like, and they, luckily a lot of the gas companies, you call them up, say gas leak, and they show up right away, and they test, and they found this pinprick of a leak. And we would never have known that if we didn't test our bodies for that.
Yeah.
So my health, my body responded to mycotoxins and these indoor air problems through chronic fatigue. Like, I was getting more tired than I've ever been in my whole life. I was bloating a lot, and eczema. I had crazy eczema. And once we removed Arya's window, I was like, I can't be that affected from her window. So we started looking at different places in the house. And we got into the crawl spaces, and we did all these things and started like remediating different trouble points in our house. And my health started coming back, and my energy came back. And my wife didn't take the test yet, but she can feel her energy going up. We saw my son started, he had little pimples on his arms as a 3-year-old, and they started vanishing. And all these little issues started disappearing because of cleaning the house and cleaning our air. And it was amazing. That made me go, oh, okay. So the dermatologists were correct. Alopecia is genetic, but it's a genetic response to a chronic attack on your immune system. And my genetic response is the fatigue and the eczema and those kind of skin issues. My daughter's was alopecia. And once that finally connected, I was like, there's so many people who have genetic responses. They're told that is a genetic response. There's not a cure. And before you throw in a towel, test the air, test the dust in your house. Take a mycotoxin test. Try different things that can potentially open your eyes. So yeah, my health definitely came back. I'm still battling some of it for sure, because we're still remediating parts of our house. But it was night and day. It really changed my energy levels, and made me go like, okay, this is bigger than I thought. This is more than alopecia, even though alopecia is a big deal. This is kind of across the gamut for so many people.
I am so sorry you guys went through this, but I am so happy that you have answers and that things are improving and that you are sharing your story, because no doubt there is somebody out there today going through something similar and they don't have those answers yet. So thank you so much, Jamie, for being here. Is there any final thoughts you want to leave us with? I'm sure we'll hear more from you. I know you have big plans to, spread awareness. So.
Well, you've probably heard enough because I was rambling. But the one thing that it was empowering to say to my daughter one day, that she was like, Dada, what happens if it all what happens if it all comes back? Because it could be random, Dada. What happens if it just happened? Like, if it all recedes and I lose it all again? And I told her, we have a plan. We know what we would do. We know how we would test our bodies again. We know how we would test our house. We have a reassuredness of the science of it. And that just made us both just tear up and just be like, oh, thank God. Because not having an idea of how to respond to something and feeling like you're helpless and feeling like you don't know, and because it's so confusing, it can be so confusing. Yeah. Having that reassuredness of a plan gives us so much strength. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing for us. So I hope people who see this story, because it's very personal to share, and it feels very scary to share, to be honest with you. Maybe hopefully it clicks up for something for you, and you just try one more thing. Just test a different way. And don't just accept what someone tells you. Just kind of do the extra due diligence for yourself, because you could find that trigger, and it would make all the difference for you or your loved one.
It would make all the difference. Well, thank you so much again. If you're listening, help us spread this message of awareness. Share this story. Head on over to changetheairfoundation.org. You'll see Jamie's article. It is beautifully written from the heart. I can't get through it without crying. But sign up for our newsletter while you're there, because it's the best way to get the tidbits and important information like this directly to your inbox. So we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.